features that I have built in PCF Builder firsthand. I've not released it. I will be releasing it after this event completes. That will be tonight. And then you would be able to use those features from tomorrow. But you're getting a first look in what's coming in PCF Builder today. But before I show you what's coming in PCF Builder, let me go to next slide. So how it all started. It started on June 23rd, 2019, and I had written blog about PCF a few months back, and people were reaching out because they were either not understanding which CLI commands to run, where they need to be run, and things like that. So they were running into a lot of issues. And that's when I thought, how about I create a tool? And then I was thinking about creating a bat file, creating probably a Visual Studio extension at that point, because Visual Studio Code was not that familiar with all the CRM developers. We were all using Visual Studio. So that's when I thought, maybe why not build a tool in XRM Toolbox, because XRM Toolbox is the go-to tool for everyone in CRM community. So that's where I created my first XRM Toolbox, and that initially I called it as PCF Custom Control Builder, which I renamed it to PCF Builder now. It short looks good, like PCF Gallery, PCF Builder, sounds good, right? But how did the first version look like? And as you can see, we only had like, there was just few steps aligned. That at that time, it made sense because a lot of people were getting they were new into PCF. So they didn't knew which steps they need to follow. So at that point, it made sense to put these steps in there where it says, okay, first you have to do this, second you have to do that, third you have to do is your test your project, and then create a solution. But then new features were added to the CLI and new capabilities were discovered because we were just learning about PCF at that point. And then I was like, can we do this? Can we do that in the graphical user interface rather than doing it from the code or doing it from the CLI? So then what our current version look like today? Not the one that's released, but the current version that already exists on the XRM Toolbox. Now that version has a 2-column panel. And in one column, you have the PCF component details and the Dataverse solution details. Everything is on one single column, and the majority of it is been occupied by the command prompt. Now, it looked good at point, but I was like, there are a few things that I could do to improve it. Now, the current tool already did some of the things, like if you have watched Ivan's session, he described how the current tool works, where you can create your PCF component. It identifies whether the preview image is added, whether the CSS is added, whether the RESX file is added. And then it also helps you initialize the Dataverse solution. And then you can build the Dataverse solution and then deploy the Dataverse solution to your environment as well. Now, it also had the capability to add your PCF controls into an existing solution without even creating a new one, which CLI doesn't allow you to do that. So if you're going to the CLI, it will always create a new solution for you. But I wanted to prevent that from happening. And because if you're a developer, you create this solutions in Dataverse, and the solutions, you would say, these are all my PCF controls are going to be in one solution. All my plugins are going to be in one solution. All my web resources are going to be in one solution. So you differentiate between the solutions and between the components that are going to host in the solutions, right? So that's why I had that request from so many people that why can't we use an existing solution to deploy the components that we're building? So that's why I added that feature where you can use an existing solution. And because I'm using XRM Toolbox, XRM Toolbox allowed me to connect to the Dataverse solution pretty easily. And using that capabilities, I was able to get all the existing solutions and then add that current PCF control that you have created inside that Dataverse solution as well, which was working fine. But again, I thought to myself, what can we do? What added feature can I add to the tool which will make life more easier? So there was few nuances in the tool. Like one of the thing that you could do is so all the names that it required were all friendly names, but then the tool was parsing out the friendly names and then removing the spaces and the special characters to create the unique name. But tool was doing it for you, but you didn't had any control on defining your own unique names. And some of the people did ask me like, can I provide my own unique name, because we want to put a friendly name, but we want a different unique name or a backend name, right? A solution name or something like that. So I tried to add it on the publisher prefix, and then the request came to add it on the solution. So I was like, okay, it makes sense to add two different things, the friendly name separate and capture the display name. But based on what you're working with, like if you're working with PCF or if you're working with solutions, the display names and friendly names are not like, it's not that connected sometimes. And there are few things that you have to figure it out, how to put friendly names and how to put display name, unique names. So I had figured that out in the new version. So that's why I put that in as well. The second thing was, there was, once you create a solution, there were a few things that that were provided by the solution, and that were like the preview image were getting added, the base CSS file was getting added, and the base localization file was getting added. But you still wanted to go in the manifest file to create your properties, to create your type groups, to enable or disable features. And then if you are coming from a front-end background, like if you are a front-end developer and you don't know anything about PCF, but you know React, or you know TypeScript, or you know Node.js, or Vue, or any other library for front-end development out there. If you know those things, but if you're coming to PCF without knowing what PCF is, it makes harder for you to create manifest files. And even if it's harder, even for the people who have been learning PCF from Dynamics background, because PCF is completely new concept, right? So understanding manifest files sometimes take a little bit longer than and understanding how it all flows. So, and then there are little references here and there, and you would get build errors. So I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to make it more easier for people to handle the manifest file without worrying or without even going to the manifest file. I wanted to give them the ability, and thanks to Jonas, it was one of his requests, so that he wanted a UI where he can add properties. And that's when I thought, maybe I provide a user interface where you don't even have to go to the manifest file at all. So that's another feature that I've added, which you will look in a bit. Then comes the package type versus the build mode. Now you had the in the previous version, you had a checkbox called as managed. Now that was good. It was creating the if you wanted it, you can create a managed file or unmanaged solution file, and you had that ability in the current current tool. But what was lacking is there were differentiation between the package type and the build mode. So the package type you can have managed, unmanaged, or both. But the build mode is where you are actually building your solution file that could be either in debug mode or in release mode. And this is exactly the same way how Visual Studio works. So in Visual Studio, you have the debug mode or you have the release mode. And normally when you're in your dev environment, you would create a solution in debug mode. But then when you are trying to push it to test environment or production environment, you don't want the debug mode to be released, right? You want a condensed or optimized package to be deployed to your production because it runs faster. And that's where the release mode comes into play. So the tool did not allow you to create or differentiate between the package type and the build mode. It only considered everything as debug mode, and it only allowed you to create either managed or either unmanaged. So what does the new version looks like? Again, so a lot of UI construction here as well. Initially, if you saw that command prompt is using most of the space, and command prompt is good way to see what all commands are getting executed and what's the output of the execution of those CLI commands. So it makes sense to keep the command prompt, but command prompt using the entire space did not make sense. So I was like, okay, let me go with the three column structure, and where I can have all the space for my code components, because I wanted to add more details to it, more features in the code components. And then I also wanted to add some details in the Dataverse solution. So I wanted to have, like, I couldn't have all of that in one single column, so I had to split that out. So it made sense to go with the three column structure. So now, as you can see on the screen, we have the code components on the first column, then the Dataverse solution details on the second column, along with the current authentication profile. And then the third column is all about command prompt. Now, you can quickly see I've already underlined some of the highlights that I've done in the tool. So now the control details have been splitted out into display name and the control name and the description. So these are all the control details. Then the solution details is also following the same structure. So now solution details also has the friendly name and the unique name differentiated. So now you can specify your friendly name and you can specify your unique name, which could be different than your friendly name. Same goes with publisher details as well. So you have friendly name, unique name, and prefix. So you can specify everything separately. Also, you can use existing solution, but now you can also use existing publisher as well. So let's say you already have a publisher. You don't want to keep thinking what publisher you should use, because that happens all the time. If I'm creating PCF controls for different clients, I'm connecting to different environments all the time. I have to go back to see a Dataverse solution and look at the prefixes that the client is using, and then go and type in all those details. Because if I don't provide those details, the tool is not going to work, or CLI commands are going to throw errors on me, right? So CLI commands need those things, and that's why I had to provide those things to the CLI so that it can run it properly. But now, because we are using XM Toolbox, I was able to pull all the data from Dataverse. So you can pull your existing solution, you can pull your existing publisher, and both are not connected to each other. So if you and I'll show you how these things work. So I won't go into details into this right now. Then I added these action buttons. Now there were a few action buttons earlier in the current version there is. So, but then the only one that we have is the preview image and the language file. So language file, again, thanks to Ivan, his scaffolding tool allowed me to add language files on the fly. So I'm using his PCF generator tool to add language files and then add and update preview image. So preview image, you were able to only see it, but not update it. So now I've added a feature to add or update the preview images. Now, then comes the update control details. Update control details is, so let's say you want to change the display name, or you want to change the description. So you can do that just by updating the control details from the tool itself. So you don't have to go to manifest file anymore. Then the second button from the left is the add and manage property. Now this is the biggie, so I'm going to hold it off and I'm going to show it how it all works. But to give you the gist, you can add and manage all the properties that you define in the manifest file from the tool itself. So you don't ever have to go to the manifest file. Then enable and disable features, again, pretty straightforward. You just enable or disable the features in the manifest file. And then lastly, as I said, initial, like the current version did not differentiate between the solution package type and the build mode. So now I've added that capability where when you're building the solution, it is able to identify what package type do you really want, and then also define your build mode. So you can create your build mode if you're deploying it on test maybe, or if you're for PCF gallery, you don't want your build mode to be debug. You always want to make sure that your build mode is always released. If you're not using GitHub Actions, how Ivan showed, then you want to use, and if you're going to use the PCF builder tool, then you might want to keep this as at release and then build the solution file and then deploy it to GitHub. Okay, so before we move on, there's one feature that I won't be able to show it to you because and I mean in the demo, that's why I had to put a screenshot over here, is about the Power Apps CLI update. Now I know I messed up the name here, but I've corrected it in the version that is going to get released. So the Power Apps CLI update. Now, every time a CLI update is happening, there's when you run the CLI command, it prompts you that there's a new version available. But that's where I'm recognizing those notifications from the CLI, and then I'm prompting the user that there's a new version available. Now, if you say no, then I'm at the mercy of CLI to let me know if there's a new version available. And CLI does not always remind you to do that today. I'm trying to see if there's a better way of prompting the users all the time whenever there is new version available and they don't have the new version installed. So that is still work in progress. I'm still trying to find a better way of doing it. But anyway, before we go to questions, let's do the demo. So let me open up the PCF builder tool, and this is the new tool. It's not released yet. It will be released at the end of this event by tonight. So you should be able to see this in as an update on your XRM Toolbox tomorrow. So it's pretty straightforward. So the namespace, you provide your namespace. So let's say test demo pro dev. Now, let me give that my control name, and then demo for pro dev event. Now, as you type in the display name, the control name is getting auto-populated, but you can also provide some space here. And but the control name would stay as is. So the display name would have spaces in it. The control name does not have spaces in it. So it automatically, how you know how CRM does it or how Dataverse does it, like when you're creating attributes and you start typing the attribute name, the attribute schema names gets auto-generated. It just removes all the spaces and all the special characters from it. A similar function is been implemented over here, but now you have the ability to say test something, which is totally different than the display name. So you have the ability to provide your own control name, which will differ from the display name. So, and then you give the description, you select the template, you select the additional package. Either you want Fluent UI or you want none. So I want none, and then you say create. Now this create would run two commands. It would run the initialization command, and it will also run the npm install command, which installs all the dependent or package dependencies that are required for PCF. Now, this is one thing that most people forget doing whenever they take the controls from code from GitHub. The code from GitHub will never have the packages installed because the node modules package will be missing on it. So you always have to make sure that you're running the npm install commands whenever you're taking anyone's controls from GitHub directly. So now, as you can see, I just put in some details over here and I hit create. The checkbox here went back to initialize, and then you can see that I've already got the preview image, the CSS file, and the RSX files all populated. So now let me open up in Visual Studio Code. So now I can, as soon as you click on it, the Visual Studio Code opens up, and you can see that it has my string files. The control manifest has the references to those string files. It also has references to the CSS over here. And then the CSS is exactly what Ivan was showing in his demo, where it has the namespace and the control name defined over here. And then the preview image is also defined in the control manifest file. Okay. Now, once this is created, let's go back and let's just say I wanna keep it. Okay, let me see if I can show you live updating. Okay, let's see. We won't show the command prompt. Let's just not worry about the command prompt here. I'm going to show how updates happen live in the manifest file. Okay, so now we have the manifest file over here, right? Now what we would do is we would update the control details. So now my control details over here are constructor is over here, but I can change the display name. So I'm going to change the display name. I'm going to say this okay, and I'm going to keep the description as is. So if you it's smart enough that if you have not provided anything, it will not do any changes. Like it's not going to blank it out. So if you have to blank it out, there is no way you can do. Currently the tool won't be able to do it. So now it says, now you can see that it was instantaneous. The updates in the control manifest file were instantaneous. And you can see that the new display name occurs over here. And then okay, and the new display name that I just entered shows up over here as well. Then is the preview image. Ooh. Oh, that's not good. All right, I'm going to hit continue. I'm going to look into what's happening with this later on before I release it. But let's move on. And then you can add the language file. Now, adding the language file, there's no updates to this. This is exactly how it is today. So you can choose Albanian over here, and then it will just add the Albanian file for you. And there you go. It added the Albanian resource file for you. And you can go in the resource file, and then you can see it renders the resource file. I'm using an extension for resource files, so it makes your life easier to just update the values over here. So I can put something, whatever it calls in Albanian. And yeah, that's it, and save it. So going back to my control manifest file over here. Now, the next thing is managing your properties. So if you click on managing your properties, it would show you the property window, and it will detect the property that is already in here and allows you to create type groups and also create properties or delete properties or update properties. So it gives you all that crude operation that you need on the properties. So let's just go and rename this property, because I don't like that sample property. I'll say this is going to be my all text description. Okay, I'm going to keep everything same, and I'm going to say, okay, the type is going to be text, and then I say update property. You can see that instantaneously the manifest file got updated. Now let's go and create some types. So you have to right click the type group and then say add type, and then add type group. You will name your type group. So I'll say this is my all text, and then you have to when you create a type group, you have to first give what the initial type of the type group is going to be. So I'm going to say single, and this is you can see all the data types that are available for you as well. Now here is the thing, data types keep changing at some point. Now recently they deprecated two options, and they deprecated option set. So if I'm selecting option set or two options, I'm going to show you how it gets indicated, but let me just select text here and then say create update group. So type group got created over here, and you can see that instantaneously the manifest file got updated as well. So let's go to description and then say I'm going to use type group rather than using the data type that's available from the CLI. I'm going to use the type group, this type group, right? So I select type group, and it gives me the type group over here, and I can say update. So let's just go here. So as you can see now, it's saying off type in a single line text. I'm going to say update property, and then it changed. It removed the off type and it added off type group and then say all text. So now it's making sure that all of your things are flowing together, and manifest file will never render with an error or never be invalidated. So that's how you manage your properties. Now there are a few other things. So let me just quickly add a few more properties so I can show that thing. Percentage, I'll say it's going to be whole number, and then update, and let me create few groups. Numbers only, it's going to be whole number, next I'm going to say it's currency, and then in the all text I can add more types to it. Selected text, text is already there, so text area, and then that's it. Now when I go to type group, you can see that it's giving me some insights on it as well. So it's telling me if I update the type group name, all of its references will be updated. It's also telling me how many times it's been used. So it's telling me it's used once, and it's also telling me which property is using it. So right now I'm showing top 6 properties that are using the specific type groups, and also I'm defining the types under that type groups as well. So you're getting a lot of insights on the type group. Now let's go and add some more properties over here. So memo, where did we go? Add property, memo, and memo, and type group, say next, create property, and then I'll put percentage on here as well, next, and all of those things are happening instantaneously. You can see that the property got added over here. Now mixed is been used twice, right? It's used on percentage and it's used on memo. Now what if you have to do this in manifest file, if you have to rename the type group name? So if I have to change the type group name from mixed to say non-mixed, it's gonna give me errors because the properties would still be referencing to mixed, and now there is no type group name is mixed, so it will give me errors. But the tool is able to identify wherever mixed was used, and it's going to update all those things. So if you look over here, you can see that not here, type property, here the off type is mixed, and here the off type is mixed, right? So keep an eye out here, and I'll update this, and that both changed to non-mixed, right? Along with the type group name. So the type group name also changed to non-mixed, but the properties that were referencing mixed now also got changed to non-mixed as well. So that's what I had done in the new version, where you can manage your entire properties just from the tool. You don't have to go to the manifest file. Okay, then is the enable disable feature, which is pretty simple. So again, you can see that the manifest file doesn't have any feature enabled, but as soon as I say web API, it added the feature usage, it added the use feature tag. If I remove it, it will remove everything. So it's so easy, right? And it's so fast. Like you can see instantaneous updates on the manifest file as well. And then just keep it and say close and build. Now, every time you do any changes on the manifest file, you have to build it. And the tool is able to identify those things and then just build it so that you don't have issues. There's some issue with the things, I guess. I didn't provide the display name, I believe. But anyway, so coming back to the solution here, again, you can use an existing solution. And then it provides you the list of solution. Now, if I'm selecting any solution, it auto-populates all the other details that I need. But let's say I'm not using any existing solution. I still have the ability to say test, demo, and then it provides me an ability to give a unique name, which is different than the friendly name. But I also have the ability to pick the publishers from the tool. So I can pick the publisher, but give the solution details separately. And I can still create a Dataverse solution as well. Again, just to reiterate some of the things, if you ever run into issues with the MS build when building the Dataverse solution, make sure you go to settings and make sure that the MS build path is correctly populated over here. The tool is able to identify the correct MS build path, but sometimes if it doesn't, then you just have to make sure that it's populated in this settings. Okay. And with that, let's go over some questions. And before we go over the questions, I've provided my social media information, so you can connect with me on Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub, YouTube, and also my website called powermaverick.dev. You can also become my sponsor, and the sponsor link is on the GitHub. There are a few swags based on how much you sponsor. So depending on that, you might get some swags. So check that website out. Any questions?
So Danish, I think we have a few questions in the chat. Yeah. Do you want me to read them, or do you want to?
Sure, I'll go over them. So do we push the, so Davey says, do we push the build or release version to GitHub? Well, if you're doing it, it depends, right? If you're doing it for your dev environment, then you want to do your build version. If you're doing it for PCF gallery, then I would recommend go with the release version rather than the build version. And the next question is again from Davey. Is the XRM toolbox allows us to also to create dataset control? See, the tools are there to help you with the CLI commands of it. But when you're saying, will it help you to create a dataset control? Well, from the CLI command, yes, it will help you, but it won't provide you with the code that will create the dataset control for you. That is something that you will have to do it on your own, going into the file. So now I have, let me go to the file over here. So you have to go in the code. And you have to write code in here in the init method, in the update view method, and then there are a few other things that you have to do in the code itself to create the controls. And the controls just won't be created for you. It's just giving you a framework to help create the controls. The second question is, could you please share the name of the VS Code extension that renders the resource string? Yeah, let me see. I normally don't remember the control names. Yeah, it's called REX editor. That's the one that I have installed. Okay, where do you click on the tool to add the feature? So yeah, you have to click on enable and disable features, and then you just check which feature you want to enable or which feature you want to disable. So Web API is already enabled. If I click on it, it will get disabled. If I click on it, it will get enabled. Okay. Vishal asked the question, first of all, thanks for the great tool for lazy people like us. Yeah, I'm lazy as well. So truth to be told, just have one suggestion. Can we have solution version field editable? Solution version. Oh, this field you're talking about. Sure. Yes. Can you add that as a feature enhancement on the GitHub so that I can track it and I don't forget about it? But yeah, definitely. I think so that can be done. Next question is from Mayank Kumar. Great tool. Apologies if this covered already. What is enable disable feature button does in the new tool? Also, if the new type gets added, removed, does the tool handle this automatically or we need to update to the new version? So there are two questions here, right? First is what is enable disable feature does. So PCF, like the framework allows you to, like the CLI, not the CLI, but the PCF project has a control manifest file, and control manifest file has some features. So if you're working with Web API, and if you have Web API in the sense Dataverse Web API, right? And if you have not enabled this Web API feature, then you won't be able to do any of the Dataverse Web API calls. The tool will not, it will prevent you from doing those calls. Or if you have not enabled capture images, then it won't allow you to use capture images in the code, and that way you won't be able to capture images in your on your control. So in order to make sure that you are capturing an image, you have to enable that features in the manifest file, and that's where you have to go here and then just say check. Okay. And there was another question, same question, the second part. Also, if the new type gets added, removed, the tool. Yeah, so right now the tool won't be able to handle if there are new types getting added. That is something that I can look into for the future versions, where it will automatically detect if there are any new types added, so that you won't need to download new versions all the time. So I'll definitely look into it. Okay, I think so I've covered all the questions. Oh, there's one from David Wade, but he sent me a separate note. For type group, suggest the initial option be blank instead of currency, and that selecting a type be required. So yes, selecting. So if you are to add a type group, the initial type group selection is required, because whenever I'm creating a type group without the type, the manifest file becomes invalidated, and I don't want to leave my manifest file in an invalidated state. So that's why I had to give the initial type selection before you can even create a type group. Okay, yeah, that's it. Any other questions? There's one more question from Anvesha. Maybe this is a bit daft as I'm new to PCF. What is the use of edit PCF control button on the top left? Yes, so edit button is when you already have an existing PCF control and you click on edit. What it would do, so let me just pick control, which I already have. I don't have anything handy, but let me pull something. So as you can see, I have a existing control, and if I either if I do a reload details or if I click on edit details, it does the same thing. It would reload or edit the control details for you. So it goes, checks for manifest file, checks for PCF project files, checks for CDS project file, checks for solution XML, and grabs all the data points that are really needed for you to see what the what all these details would be for a control. Did that answer your question? Okay, Victor has a question. You may have already said that, but how does the tool differs from VS Code extension? Well, the XRM toolbox is more for beginners, right? And the people who don't actually like to work with CLI commands or don't actually like to work with Visual Studio commands at all, and really like an interface where they can just click buttons and then make things happen. That's where the XRM toolbox extension comes into play. Whereas the Visual Studio Code extension is more for people who don't want to leave the Visual Studio Code experience. When I built this tool, some people, like we had a group of people where they didn't want to use this tool because they wanted to work only out of Visual Studio Code, and that's when I had to create an extension in Visual Studio Code as well, so that you have the flexibility. Both of them does almost similar things, but I would say XRM Toolbox tool is doing more than what Visual Studio Code extension is doing, just because you don't have that XRM Toolbox um, framework beneath it, where I can do more stuff. And also it's C# code, right? You can do a lot of this data manipulation and all the other funky stuff that you are limited when you're building an extension. So there's a lot of differences. Okay, yeah. I don't see any more questions. So thank you very much. It was great to present on this topic.
Thank you, Danish. And so we've got 2 more minutes left till the actual official Q&A begins.
Yep.
So this is a great opportunity. Sorry, Danish?
I said I'm super excited for that.
Definitely. So so this is the time where you get all your questions ready, because we have some special guests who will be helping to address your common challenges with PCF development. So obviously we've got Danish. We've also got some special guests. We've got Scott Durrow, who, if you don't know by now, you should do. He's a very big legend in the Power Platform development space. But we've also got special guests from Microsoft as well, haven't we, Danish?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So obviously, so we've got Todd, but I'll let you introduce Todd because I know he's very, very important, very important in the PCF world. And who else will be joining us today for our Q&A?
So we have, so yeah, I have a slide ready. So let me present it and then we'll kick it off on the top of the hour.